Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Welcome to Spaced Out Radio Broadcasting, live tonight from the countryside of Northwest Georgia in the southeastern United States. Each week we bring you a variety of topics, and tonight we have a great show for you. Trey Hudson is here. I'm the cryptid huntress, Jessica Jones, sitting in the captain's chair tonight for Dave Scott. He's going to be back tomorrow night, but you guys have me here tonight. So we're going to have a really good time. And be sure to catch Dave every weeknight here on Spaced Out Radio and watch my show Off the Trails every Saturday and Sunday night, followed by After Hours. All right. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including Rocking Out to Bumblefoot, read up on SOR Newswire, and so much more. Be sure to subscribe and hit that bell. If you could do us a huge favor, share this out with a friend. We'd really appreciate it. This helps Spaced Out Radio grow and to bring our listeners more content. Okay. Without you, Spaced Out Radio would not be possible, and we thank you for your support. Speaking of support, if you'd like to help the lights stay on at SOR, please know that our super chat is open, and it's a fantastic way to support everything we have and we do here at SOR. Don't forget to share this with a friend, and this is truly the best way to support all we do here at SOR. We also have a store filled with SOR swag, including this awesome Dogman t-shirt, everybody, and merchandise for your browsing pleasure, which also supports SOR as a whole. You can pick up a Woo hoodie, Off the Trails t-shirts and tank tops, koozies, and so much more. Grab your favorite snack and your drink, you guys, and get ready, because it's about time to hop on the Woo train tonight, all right? And we're going off the rails. Get it, you guys? It's not off the trails. It's off the rails on the Woo train tonight. And we've got paranormal researcher and author Trey Hudson here tonight. And I can't wait. Trey is actually a good friend of mine and my teammate, okay? So let's see who all we have in chat tonight. This is actually a first for me. I don't usually do this on my show, and I can't wait. This is really fun. All right, so in gold, we have Cosmic Floor. All right, we've got Silver, Jeffrey DeRuin, and in bronze, we have Ann Palmer. Hey, y'all. All right, so who else we got in here tonight? We've got Race Fan. Hello, Paul Holland. Grandmaster UV, what's up? All right, we have Lisa C. Hello, and They Know Jim. Hey, how are you doing? Okay, D. Cohen. Hey, and we got John Husa. Okay, hello. I hope I don't get y'all's names all messed up. I'm so sorry, but this is a lot of fun. Paranormal Pixie. Hey, how are you? North Alabama Cryptid. What's up, dude? All right. Tombstone. Hello. And let's see. The JoJo Bone Show. What's up? Who else we got here? Natalie, UK. What's up? Thank you for being here. Okay. Jeanette Sanchez. Hello, Evan Walters. What's up, bud? Okay. And Brown Dwarf, of course. We got Brown Dwarf in the house tonight. Also, let's see. Who else do we have here? Oh, there went all my comments, you guys. They all just disappeared like magic on my screen. So Abe Trough. Hello. What's up, Bob Perkins? Hello. Haley, Leroy, Washington, the Dirt Road Mystic. All right. The Dirt Road Mystic. I really like that name. Okay. Patrick Noble. Hey, your DVD is in the mail, by the way. All right. I'll send you that tracking information tomorrow. Okay. And yeah, that was for my team. We have a tracking video, everybody. If you're interested in buying one, to learn how to track Sasquatch, y'all go to my website, thecryptidhuntress.com. Okay. I forgot to mention that in my intro, by the way. Yeah, you guys can find me at thecryptidhuntress.com. All right. And please subscribe to my YouTube channel, The Cryptid Huntress. All right. I would greatly appreciate that. Okay. I can't believe I didn't mention that. Okay. All right. So who else we got in here? A Carfoon Brave V. What's up? Dim to Dim. Hey, how are you tonight? Thank you for being here. Of course, Enzo. It's my main man. Enzo, my emergency guest co-host, is in the house tonight. All right, we got Digger Dog and hello, Black Dragon. Glenn Dannison, hello. Alien Critter, hello. Bigfoot. Michigan Rob, of course. I'm so glad you're here tonight. Long time no see. All right, Ruger Ridge, hey. Looking forward to seeing you on Bigfoot Michigan Rob show tomorrow night. All right, They Know Jim, hello. All right, Jessica McCreary, hello. Thank you for being here. Julie, hi, glad you're here. Jenny, White Bear, hello. And let's see who else we got. All right, Rachmanov Nov, what's up? Okay, and all right. If I missed anybody, I apologize. I'm going to try to get to you guys again when we hit the break in a little while. If I missed anybody, there's Grantavius. What's up, Grant? It's so good to see you guys. Okay. All right. Let's get to our guest tonight, y'all. I'm just really, really, really blessed and happy you guys are all here. Okay. So like I said, my guest tonight is Trey Hudson. You guys might have heard of Trey. He is the author of a really awesome book called The Meadow Project. Okay. The Meadow Project just happens to be a project that my team works on. Okay. So I am honored to have Trey here with me tonight, and I'm going to read you his bio right quick, okay? Trey is the current director of the Anomalous Studies and Observation Group, and his team has spent years researching the Meadow, which has been compared to the infamous Skinwalker Ranch itself with its own reports of UFOs, cryptids, portals, missing time, crop circle formations, women in black, not men in black, but women, orbs, strange beams of lights, mysterious beings, and so much more. All right. So Trey grew up in Atlanta and went to the University of West Georgia, where he majored in psychology. Okay. And he has a minor in anthropology. Around the time he graduated from college, he was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the U.S. Army Reserves and branched as military intelligence. All right. He became a military intelligence officer, you guys. And he is now a disabled vet, and in 1989, he entered the federal government service as a security specialist. In 2008 to 2009, Trey served a tour in Afghanistan as an operations and anti-terrorism officer. Trey is also an EMS first responder, combat lifesaver, rescue scuba diver, a certified military emergency management specialist, certified DoD security professional, and extra class amateur radio operator, which is awesome because we use all that stuff out in the field. Trey is married, lives in the southern U.S., and has 2 grown daughters. And Trey is one of my bestest friends. Love Trey, and I'm going to welcome him to Spaced Out Radio tonight. Hey, Trey.
Hey, how's it going?
Oh, man, it's awesome. Hey, I'm in the captain's chair tonight, so I'm here taking over Dave Scott's spot. So, you know.
So who owns the night? Who owns the night?
Hey,
you own the night.
We own the night. Yes, we all own the
That's
night.
right.
Everybody here owns the night. Absolutely. Yes. So Trey, you know, I've known you for some time now. Okay. And I remember back, I guess it was around 2012, I went to a Bigfoot conference. And and there was a guy there that I'm not going to say he was looking out of place, but he did have on a t-shirt that said he was a ghost hunter. Okay.
Right.
And so I thought that was really cool. And because I see ghosts, and I do Bigfoot research too. So I have to say, I think that guy was you, and that's when I
It
met
was,
you.
yeah.
Yeah, it was. So yeah, that was when I met you, and that's when we all kind of started meshing together, and you became part of our team,
Mhm.
and you started your own team, and we've
Right.
just been working together doing field research ever since. Uh, tell me a little bit about how you got into paranormal investigating.
Oh, that's a great story. Yeah, and a great question. Is I was a child of the '70s, and listening to you, welcome all the various people in the chat room. It reminded me, a child of the '70s and growing up in the '60s of Romper Room and Miss Kathy's Magic Mirror, and she would say,
Yeah.
hello, Jess, I see Jessica and I see Bobby. She never saw Trey because that's such an odd name, and I was just inconsolable for the rest of the day. But
Oh.
I know it's sad, but the '60s went into the '70s, and the '70s were a really cool uh, hotbed for all things freaky and weird. I mean, for a lot of reasons, but in the
Yeah.
high strangeness, Fortean, UFOs, cryptids, all of that. They had some wonderful films that came out that were pseudo documentaries about Bigfoot expeditions, and they had a wonderful TV show called In Search of with Leonard Nimoy that explored strange, different, odd, things. And my parents, bless their hearts, kind of, I don't know if they were humoring me just to shut me up or if they really wanted to cultivate an interest in this stuff, but they would, buy me magazines and books and stuff. And so, as I, watched this stuff, I was like this weird, mutated little sponge soaking all this stuff in. And now I'm a big mutated sponge. And so, that was a healthy interest in this stuff. I really, I really enjoyed it. I found it intriguing. It was in the news all the time back then. And I thought, wow, there's got to be something more, to the world than just, what we see around us. And so I was interested in it all through high school, and went to college, studied under at University of West Georgia, under Bill Roll and some other famous parapsychologists, and under some other really really sharp people. And then doggone it, life got in the way of living. When I graduated college, it's like, dang it, not only am I a college graduate, but I'm unemployed now. So I had to go out and get a real job. And I did everything from construction work. I was a private investigator in Atlanta. Uh, as you said earlier, I hopped on board with federal service, and I've been employed with the Department of Defense for over 30 years. And back in 2006, now let me back up. In 2008, I, like everybody else, the ghost TV shows started coming on. You had Ghost Hunters and Ghost Hunters International, and all these shows. And I'm like, oh, wow, now my interest is, rekindled. It's been queued back up. And so I joined a local paranormal investigations group and became a investigator, and, studied, the typical haunted houses and haunted, factories and stuff like that. And then things started kind of petering out in that realm. People kind of stopped referring cases and all. So I'm like, either I sit here and I stagnate, or I make my own fun. So I started researching stuff outside, looking, where does the folklore take you? Where are the weird places, throughout the America's Southeast? And, anybody that lives here in the Southeast or knows anything about the Southeast, it is a weird, spooky place. I mean, it's a lot of Scots Irish folklore here, a lot of Native American folklore here. So it's a very, very rich and fertile ground for that kind of stuff. So, as so happens, I found a place, and I was not expecting what I stumbled into with the Meadow.
Yeah, I have a little bit of knowledge on that meadow, just a tiny bit. I've
Yeah,
actually been
more
there.
a
Yeah.
few times.
I honestly, I can back up everything that you're going to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about the meadow a little bit, and there's a reason we call it the Skinwalker Ranch of the South.
Oh yeah.
This place has the type of activity that the Skinwalker Ranch has, if
Hmm.
not more, perhaps. But we have a pretty big team too, of a lot of very interesting people. And we can all pretty much back each other up on, we've experienced some weird stuff. Okay. Super weird. Now let me back up just a little bit though, because, I grew up in the hometown of where your college is. So you went to West Georgia. I grew up in that town where the college is located. And I always heard about the parapsychology department there. And it was just cutting edge, and you were actually kind of a part of that. Yeah. And I just always had to just assume that really gave you the interest in wanting to do your ghost hunting and things like that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So
the professors and all were just really fantastic, and even today there's I've been contacted by some of the professors there now, and they're still right on the cutting edge of parapsychology and some of the other kind of out there stuff. So it was really a cool program, and I was quite blessed to be a part of it.
Yeah. So, I know you had said previously when you and I have talked before, you said you felt kind of out of place at a Bigfoot conference that day when we all met you there. And, I don't think you were out of place at all, Trey. And I think that this activity that we have out in the field when we're doing Bigfoot research, it involves ghosts and it involves UFOs, it involves aliens, it involves portals, it involves all this stuff. And we know because that's part of the phenomenon that we experience in the Meadow. Okay, now you said that you have a whole lot of Southern tales, a lot of local lore and legends down in the South. And is that how you decide where to go research when you and the team are out? And I know I'm part of your team, and I'm asking you like I don't know. Yeah. But is that what draws you to areas though? And is that what drew you to the Meadow?
Yeah, it did. It's I'm like you said before, I'm an old Cold War intelligence guy. That's kind of how I earned my spurs in the world. And back then, and people can get in the Wayback Machine, hop in the DeLorean with Doc Brown and go back. We didn't have all this technology like we have now. When I was an intel officer, we had maps that we would stick up on the side of the operations tent and big clear plastic overlays, and we would take markers and draw on them, And so I'm going to kind of use that as an analogy. The information's out there. Is if you take a map and let's say you take an overlay A, and on overlay A, I'm going to mark UFO hotspots, So every place that there's been a UFO report, I put a blue dot. Okay, then I take take that off, put overlay B on, and I'm going to use brown dots, and that's everywhere where there's been cryptid, or Bigfoot sightings. And then I'm going to take that down and put a new overlay up, and I'm going to put yellow dots where there's ghost sightings. And then when I take all three of those plastic overlays and put them together, you're going to see concentrations. And the cool thing is, and this for a fact, is the area, the general location of where we research is chock full of UFO reports, cryptid reports, ghost reports, and it's this concentration. And if you start really focusing on these areas that you see these concentrations of high strangeness, and that's kind of a catch-all phrase, you're going to find activity. And the neat thing is, if you start looking and doing the research, these might be in the backyard of everybody in the chat room and listening right now. They might actually have these locations within 2 or 3 miles where they're sitting right now, which is really kind of cool.
Wow, that's interesting. I actually had Craig Jackson, who's another one of our teammates on my show over the weekend, and we were talking about the cave systems, and we were showing that in relation to the missing peoples clusters that David Paulides has put together in his Missing 411 series, and we put we compared those two maps together, and we kind of overlaid them. And they correlated. They kind of it looked the same, and then we put Bigfoot sightings on top of that, and it overlaid on top of those. Yeah. So it's all like layers, it's layers in the high strangeness. Yeah,
it is. And what's really kind of cool is, and without going into the specific location, one of David Paulides' missing persons clusters is about 50 miles from the Meadow.
Wow.
So that adds another little weird, bit of strangeness into the whole aspect of it.
Yeah, Trey, where do you think all these missing people are going? Do you have an idea?
Uh, there's some really interesting theories on that. Now, do I know? Of course not. The longer I'm in this, I get fewer answers and more questions. And I think that somehow maybe they wink out of existence. They step into something else, and we've actually seen this kind of phenomena with our own eyes, and I've captured it on film with some of our team members. Is they will kind of fade out of this reality and go somewhere else for a period of time. Now, luckily, our team was able to come back out and
Yeah.
survived it. But maybe if people aren't able to come back out, maybe they're caught, if you will, in between the metaphysical walls. You've got this wall and these rooms, and they're trapped right in between somewhere. Without going into pop culture, it's what Stranger Things calls the upside down. Maybe
Yeah.
they're in that realm.
Wow, that's interesting. We're talking about this now because, last week we were talking about CERN being cut on, over in Switzerland, and how it could possibly cause dimensional shifts and all that kind of stuff. And today I actually just came across a video that someone had made showing some of the Mandela effects that have just popped up this week. And one of them, oh, I'm getting goosebumps right now. One of them is Chick-fil-A. My favorite place to eat. The name has changed. It's not spelled the same. Now, I don't know. I haven't been to Chick-fil-A today. So, but it looked like the name had changed. So I'm going to go find out tomorrow. Maybe I'll go get a combo meal. But yeah, things like that.
It's interesting you mentioned CERN. Is in front of CERN, in front of the headquarters, there's a statue, and it's a statue of Shiva doing her dance of creation and destruction, which is a circular process as things are created, reformed, destroyed, and go in this circle. Now, is it just that somebody thought that would be just a really cool place for the birds to sit on there in front of the CERN headquarters? Or was it put there with a purpose?
There are no coincidences. Ever.
No.
I'm learning. The destroyer. So are we destroying, are we just shifting timelines? That's my question. Are we moving timelines? Are we shifting dimensions? Something's going on because there's a lot of weird Mandela effect stuff going on. And, matter of fact, not too long ago, I was showing my dad the Ford emblem for the Ford trucks. And he owned a Ford dealership most of his life. And I showed him the logo and he was so weirded out by it. He was like, there's no curly Q in the F. And he went around his entire garage and was sending me pictures of every Ford logo he had in his garage. And let me tell you, there were about 500.
Really?
But yeah, it's really odd.
There was a curly Q. There's not?
Yeah, it has a curly Q now, but we don't remember it having a curly Q on the F. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So now it could just be that we're misremembering. That's a theory. I don't think so. That's just me. But yeah. But bringing this all back around, circling back around to the Meadow. We've experienced what we consider to be a portal, Trey.
Oh, absolutely.
And
yeah.
Who knows where that goes? We sent a couple of people in, and I'd love for you to talk about that tonight because that's a pretty big deal. And is it interdimensional? I mean, did they go into an upside down world and walk back out? That we got a lot of questions.
Yeah, more questions than we have answers. And I always have people coming up to me, well, what's going on? And I'm like, I have no idea. All I can do is tell you what we experienced and what we captured. Using different phenomenologies. But the portal, and the cube, and I've gone back, and the cube thing is weird because I've gone back and I'm rereading the Hunt for the Skinwalker. I just got finished with the Skinwalkers in the Pentagon, and our good friend Katie Page had a lot of experience at the Elbert County, Colorado ranch there, and cubes and boxes play into that, and folks are probably going, well, where in the hell is he going with this? Where I'm going is the way that this portal manifested itself in the meadow was as a cube or a box that was a cooler temperature than the surroundings. So, these weird boxes, uh, have something to do with, these interdimensional, variances.
Hmm. Very interesting. I have really explored the cube myself on all my shows and brought guests on,
Mhm.
and I had a guest named Barry Littleton who I just
Right,
love
right.
to death. He's just a wealth of knowledge when it comes to ET phenomenon and any kind of interdimensional stuff and Sasquatch as well. And we explored the cube for I've brought him on my show several times, and we've talked about this several times. Sometimes there are cubes seen inside of a spacecraft. Okay, and so
Mhm.
and it could be like a transporter, like a teleportation device, or something like that. Um, the interesting thing is that we actually have it documented on
Mhm.
film, on video, of two team members walking into this cube and
Mhm.
disappearing, and then walking back out. Trey,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
And the
yeah.
cool thing is when they disappeared off of FLIR, one of the easiest things that people say, well, they walk behind some trees or, whatever. We went back and tried our best to recreate that, in the exact same location using the same FLIR equipment. And we shot it in regular video and FLIR video. And you can't hide from the FLIR. You cannot hide from that piece of equipment. But yet, when the team members went into the cube, they were gone.
Yeah. Now, what did they describe the cube environment? Like, what did they say as they were walking up to it and as they walked into it?
Yeah, that's an excellent, excellent, excellent point. Is the cube was very distinct initially when detected through the FLIR with it was David Pardue. I think you've had him on your show before,
Hmm.
and it was very, very distinct as David's watching it through his FLIR. Now, unfortunately, anybody that's worked with this equipment, you don't run the video all the time. It just eats up your battery and eats up your space on your SD card. So about the time he started hitting record, it started fading, and all you could see was this very faint outline of a box or a cube. So we dispatched a team over there, which after they had some remarkable encounters with a couple of entities. Uh, so that was another weird thing that happened that evening. So they were dispatched to where this the remnant of this cube was, and they approached it. So they disappeared off of our FLIR equipment. We couldn't see them. And they described it as thus, that when they went into this area, that it got cold, which mimics with what we saw in the FLIR, that the cube or the box was colder than the surroundings. So that makes sense. But when they went in there, they were unencumbered. They didn't trip over any roots. They didn't get hung up on any briars or what we call down here sticker bushes. So
Yeah.
no brambles, no briars, no branches. Nothing was impeding them as they approached this thing. So they got a few feet into it and stopped. As any good person who's been trained in military patrolling, is they stop and they assess their surroundings. So they stopped, were quiet, and they assessed their surroundings. They said it was very quiet. It was very dark. Our good friend Bob Wilson describes it as like having a black velvet curtain dropped over you. Just pitch black. No light going in, no light going out. So thankfully, discretion was the better part of valor that evening, and they backed out. And the weird thing is when they backed out, they started tripping over roots and branches and stuff that wasn't there when they went in. So it's like reality, is here. And when they went into it, it was shifted just a little bit, enough to where this stuff wasn't there. And when they came back out, it had reshifted back to, the normal environment with trees and stuff. And they had to kind of fight their way back out of it. So it was absolutely a groundbreaking, and I know that sounds hyperbolic, but it was a groundbreaking experience. And to my knowledge, I don't know if anybody has captured an experience like that on video like we have.
No, I've never heard of anybody since. And I've got my ear to the ground, Trey. I'm in here doing shows
Mm,
and talking to some of the best in the field. And I've not heard another story like this before.
yeah.
And trust me, I've been on the lookout. So okay, so after the portal incident, after they walked out of the portal, exactly what happened? They got out safely, but did the portal stick around?
Well, it was starting about the time they actually went into it. It was just about dissipated. It was starting to fade away. And so, and this is just a guess, is when they approached it, I'm guessing that almost all of the energy that was created for this thing had just about dissipated. They were just picking up the remnants of it as it faded out of existence. And, so they came back out of it, and we all huddled together and did a really quick in the field after action review. Like, okay, what did you see? Describe it. What was your experience? What did you see? What did you smell? What did you taste? How do you feel? What was the emotional experience? And all of that stuff. And we weren't aware of it, but we had a visitor at camp while this was going on, which
Okay.
puts a whole another weird twist of weirdness to it, a strangeness to it. And the cool thing is I've developed some additional information, which ties back to guess where?
Where's that?
University of West Georgia.
Oh, wow. Well, we're going to have to
Yeah.
hear about all of that. Now, okay, so what you're saying is that there was a portal incident. You guys are having some super high strangeness in the meadow. And all the while, there was something really strange going on back at base camp.
Oh yeah.
Okay, well, I can tell you too, there's another layer to all of this because there was something even more, I'm not going to say more strange, but something strange going on in my world, in my home as well. And I
Mhm.
had just left the meadow that day. So
Yep.
let's go from the portal back to base camp. Tell us what happened there.
Okay. Glenn Jackson, another friend of ours, he comes onto the radio as we're discussing this amongst ourselves. And, the decision, I was trying to make a decision. Do we stay there and do we continue to investigate, or do we get back, do an after action review, videotape interviews, and try to get all of this, while it's fresh on the mind? Another thing we were concerned about is a lot of people have experienced this, not only myself, throughout the world, is you have these weird equipment failures, whenever you're out
Mhm.
investigating this stuff. And this SD card that had this video of this portal or cube and people disappearing was like gold now. It was a one of a kind thing. So we needed to get that piece of data out of the meadow into a RF protected, foil pouch, so maybe it couldn't get zapped, and get it away from the area as quick as possible. So we decided to go back to base camp. So Glenn comes on the radio and says, "Hey Trey, there's you need to come back to base camp. There's someone that wants to talk to you." And I'm like, "Yeah, Glenn, I'll talk to you when I get there. We're getting
Mhm.
ready to gather up all our equipment, come back." He goes, "Oh no, it's not me. It's somebody else." Well, who else could it be? I mean, you've been there. I mean, we are literally in the middle of nowhere. We are so deep in the woods
Yeah.
that you don't even have cell phone coverage. So I'm like, okay, let me, gather everybody up. Let me herd all these cats, and we'll start working our way back. And it's about a quarter to half a mile hike. You can't get to this area by vehicle. So we hike back to base camp, and I walk into base camp, and much to my chagrin, that's a fun word to use, much to my
Yeah.
chagrin, there,
You're
there
using
was a
big words
business.
tonight, Trey.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It must be the lemonade.
Must
Much to
be.
my must yeah, much to my chagrin, there was a businesswoman waiting for us. And
Wow.
businesswoman, I mean,
Businesswoman
she's
in the woods?
this in the woods, in the forest. Okay, so picture this. I'm gonna paint a picture for you. It's February,
Okay.
somewhere in America's Southland, in the mountains. So it's a mountainous part of the South. It's in
Classified.
February. Classified. It's
Classified location.
it's in February, and it's about 10 p.m. at night. So about 30 hours at night. It's cold. So there's this businesswoman standing there, resplendent in her loafers, slacks, blouse, and blazer. Totally inappropriate. Uh, Inappropriate for the area. And saw Christina just jumped in. Hi, Christina. How you
Christina's
doing?
here. Hi, Christina.
Yeah.
It's so good to see you. All
So,
right.
so so there's this businesswoman standing there, and so I'm like, okay, what's the deal with this woman here? And I go up to her, and she just starts like right off the bat saying, "You need to stop what you're doing. You need to follow me down this deserted county road. And there's a building down at the end of this road, this old barn, and it has monkey bears." And I'm like, what
Monkey
the
bears.
F is a monkey bear? I know what a gummy bear is. I'll walk down a trail for a sack of gummy bears, but I don't know what monkey bears are. And so it's like this
Never
is
heard
just
of a monkey bear.
bizarre. Yeah, it's bizarre. It's crazy. It's strange. It's so out of the ordinary. And everybody was on edge because of this woman. It was just, just really odd. And she was
That's weird.
insistent on us stopping what we were doing and following her down to this monkey bear lodge, the great hall of the monkey bears or whatever this place is. And so I'm like, ain't gonna happen. And there's a good friend of ours that Tim Jordan, and I said, hey, what do you think we ought to do that? He goes, no. This guy's a former Army Ranger, and a pretty bad dude. And he's like, "Yeah, I'm not going hunting any monkey bears. This is just too weird." And so I'm like, okay, let's try to shoo this woman off, get her to go away so we can do our after action review. We really need to do these interviews, get this information while it's really fresh, and vibrant in people's minds. And she just was like a blocker. She just kept putting herself into the situation to keep us from doing that. And she came up to me and started entering into a dialogue with me personally. And she said, "Oh, where did you go to university?" Okay, I went to the University of West Georgia. And she's like, "Well, I did too." Okay. And she said, "Well, what did you study there? What was your major?" I said, "Well, I have a BA in psychology." She goes, "Well, I do too." And I'm like, yeah, okay. You're parroting what I tell you. I'm going to catch her. Okay, I'm going to be Mr. Clever Pants. I said,
Yeah, you got a little intelligence background. You know how to do that. Right.
I said, who were some of your favorite professors while you were there? And she started naming off people I knew. So it's like, okay, so here we are. We're in the forest, in the middle of nowhere, wintertime, 10:30 at night, with a businesswoman, in the middle of nowhere, who went to the same university I went to, studied at the same degree I went to, and knows the same professors I do. So you roll these dice and you look at them and you say, what are the statistics of coming up with 18 sixes on the face of all of these dice? It's pretty dang remote, So I'm starting to get kind of weirded out. I'm not usually weirded out by stuff too much. Stuff doesn't really bother me too much, but this is really starting to kind of give me the heebie-jeebies, with a capital H and a capital J, the heebie-jeebies.
Jeebies, right.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm like, okay, we just need to get this woman out of here. Just get her gone. Mm-hmm. And, everybody's really uncomfortable about it. So as I'm trying to, dissuade her and get her on her way, she just stops and she walks over maybe about 20 or 30 yards maybe from where we had our main lantern hanging up, where we were doing our debrief and all, or getting ready to do our debrief. And she disrobes and urinates in front of everybody.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about where you're from. Well, I mean, I know where you're from. We don't do that. That's
not in front of people.
No, that's kind of naughtiness. We don't do that in front of polite company.
No, unless she had been drinking or something, intoxicated maybe, but it's all very odd.
Yeah, it's very odd. And Glenn, matter of fact, I think I heard Glenn during the interview say, he has never run into somebody as weird as this woman was in his 30 some odd years of being a medic.
Yeah.
And so she finally gets in her vehicle and drives off, much to our relief. And we were able to do our debrief, and we have just this fantastic 40-minute, video debrief where everybody talks about their recollections. But when I got back home, I started thinking about this. I'm like, okay, so if I go back and I look at some of the old books by, John Keel, like the Mothman prophecies, and I start reading some of that stuff, there are instances of individuals interacting with people right after they've had incidences of high strangeness. And some of the characteristics are they're not properly dressed for the occasion. They don't understand social cueing. They don't pick up on body language like, hey, woman, go away. We don't want to talk to you right now. They don't understand how you operate in a culture. They do things that are very inappropriate or out of place.
Mm-hmm.
And they try to dissuade you from your task at hand. They don't want you, either they'll try to wave you off from recounting your experiences, they'll try to discount your experiences, or they'll threaten you from speaking of your experiences. And there's a term for this, and they're called men in black. And there's also women in black. So I started thinking about it. Was this actually a person, that we encountered? What was this thing, And, I was kind of there for a while thinking, maybe this was not a human being. Maybe this was something else. But, as they say in the wonderful, Ronco, Fish-O-Matic commercials, but wait, there's more. It gets even stranger.
Yeah.
I received a message several months later, many, many months later, from a gentleman who is a psychoanalyst in Istanbul, Turkey, and graduate from the University of West Georgia. That's where he got his master's from. And he said, I want to talk to you about some of the weirdness around Carrollton, Georgia. And there's a place called the Carrollton Vortex, which I need to get more information on, get some locations, and we need to go out there and check it out. But he said, I heard your story about the woman in black. Do you have a name? I said, yes, we have a name, and we did go online and found a person that matched, the person that presented themselves to us. So I'm like, okay, is this a doppelganger kind of thing? Is this, what is this now? Yeah, she marked her territory. Yeah. So,
Thanks, Evan. That was funny.
But she, she appeared to be maybe a real person. So I said, this woman's name is, blank, redacted, Miss blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And he says, I think I know her. Like, I said, I'm curious. I said, I've been racking my brain on what happened. If you could, give me any information, he goes, do you mind if I contact her and ask her about this? I'm like, no, not at all, please. And even better, if she would be willing to talk to me, I would love it. And I said, without going into detail, she's in a career field that requires a license from the state. And, her behavior was so odd that it could put her license in jeopardy, if the authorities found out. I said, I don't want to out her. I don't want to risk, her profession. I just really want to find out what's going on. And he asked her about it. And understandably so, she didn't want to talk to me. And she said what she remembered from that evening is she had had a hard day at work. She's driving around the woods in the middle of the night to unwind. And she sees our campsite. She drives in. And she says, I started talking to them about monkey bears, which was something that my sister and I saw when we were kids, that were like a hybrid between monkeys and bears. So this is a real woman that remembers this thing. And before, I talked to my friend, I went back and I don't know if you remember, I polled everybody online, the team member. I said, give me a brief synopsis of what you remember from that evening. So I wanted to make sure I had a clear understanding of it. And they pretty much said, she was acting very weird. Like she was heavily under the influence of something, urinated in front of us. And the odd thing is all this woman remembers is speaking to us, trying to talk to us about monkey bears. She remembers us acting like we had something else to do and her getting in her vehicle and leaving. And
wow, she doesn't remember the rest?
No.
And she
No,
claimed, did he bring up and ask if she was under the influence of something?
all she said is she was driving around in the woods, just trying to relax after a hard day at work. Uh, and so, I started doing some more research into this, and there are instances, anecdotal instances of people who said that they have been under the influence of some kind of other force, and are doing the bidding of some other, power, some other entity, some other authority. So, the mystery, just when you think you have more, you know, answers, or you
Hmm.
think you have enough questions, you think you have the answer and think you have it, nailed down, it just opens up more questions. So, that it's not over. Maybe one day she'll acquiesce and you know, do an interview with me. I would love to find out what's going on. And something else he also said is he remembers her from the university days, and he said he remembers her as being someone that was a receiver, that would have been receptive to something influencing her. So, it all kind of makes sense, but then on the
Oh,
other hand, it doesn't make sense. So, that's kind of the fun part of this business is,
yeah.
just always searching for answers.
Yeah, you know what I find really interesting is that I know how far out in the middle of nowhere the Meadow is, and you actually have to hike in there to get
Mhm.
there. Like we'll camp one place, and then we have to hike, take all of our gear, and hike way off into the Meadow. Okay, and it's not a place for people to come in and wear business attire. Okay,
No,
because
no.
we're out there with our boots and our camo and stinky and greasy and dirty. Okay, and I've never seen one single person uh, with business suits or
No,
or any kind of high heels or dress shoes
no,
out there. It's just not the place. So
no.
that's a red flag immediately, right there.
Yeah, yeah. It was weird, just really weird.
Yeah. Well, you know what would be interesting if that woman would get some kind of regressive hypnotherapy done, some sort of a session to see what she really remembers from that night.
Yeah, it's strange you should mention that because that is actually something on my list of list of things to do. I've got several experiments I'm designing to take back out to the meadow, and one of the things that I'm trying to find a reputable hypnotist that specializes in hypnotic regression involving items of high strangeness,
Hmm.
and actually see what happened to some of our team members, because some of our team members, you included, have had just some bizarre, freaky experiences, and just the investigator in me, the researcher, thinks that there's probably more to it. Maybe there's something behind that veneer of what we think is normalcy. Maybe there's something back behind it. Maybe there's a screen memory and there's something further behind it. I would be willing to bet that hypnotic regression on our team members would yield very that. And hello, Rob, how you doing? Uh,
Yeah. Yeah,
so
you've got some people in here that actually
yeah,
saw you at the Alabama Bigfoot conference
yeah, oh
when
yeah,
you were speaking. Yeah, I was there
and,
too.
yep, and they got to see the videos, which is kind of cool.
They
So
did.
hypnotic regression is a fantastic tool in the toolbox. I'm thinking to see if I can do a side hustle with maybe doing some MRI imagery of the brains of people, that we know have experienced some high strangeness, and see if there's any kind of physiological changes. So I've got, all kinds of things kind of percolating.
Yeah. Well, there's much more to unpack with the Meadow too,
Oh yeah.
and if we want to stick on the subject of that one evening, I'll be glad to tell my story about what happened to me when you guys were out there experiencing the portal and the possible woman in black.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Please.
yeah, I had been there the night before and that day, and I had a small child at the time. He's still small, but he's 8 now, and this was a few years ago, and so I had to go home and go check on my kid. So I couldn't stay 2 nights out there, or 3 or 4, however long you guys have been out there. And so I came home and I had orbs floating around my house that night, and I actually have them on video.
Hmm.
Okay. And this was something that was totally out of the ordinary. Yes, I see ghosts. Yes, I've seen plenty of orbs, but not in my home. And they were dancing and flying around my son. So I have those on video. I just can't show them because my son's in a diaper. Okay. So I'm not able to show them, but I have shown them to my team. Trey, you've seen them,
Oh
and
yeah, yeah.
and it was visible to my naked eye, my son's eyes, but the person who was videotaping could not see these orbs at all, except for through the phone, the camera on the phone. So that told me, looking back on that, it's actually pretty profound, in my opinion, because it shows you that not everybody is tuned into that frequency to see this phenomenon.
Yeah, and the cool thing about the video is I remember your son going ball, ball, and pointing
Yeah.
up in the air, as the orbs are flying around, which is, that's just super cool to me. And what makes
Yeah.
it even more interesting is now that some of the information is starting to come out about the research and and I'm going to mispronounce this always, Uinta Basin there in Utah,
Yes.
Skinwalker Ranch and all of that area, is the hitchhiker phenomena. Orbs following people home who have encountered geolocations of high strangeness is extremely common, very common. And, we've all, not everybody, but many of us have experienced the hitchhiker phenomena after spending time in the Meadow. I have. Uh, the same evening that you were experiencing the orbs, one of our team members, she had started having dreams of orbs coming into her bedroom, and then having dreams of figures standing over her while she was sleeping. Now, where have we heard about figures standing over people while they were sleeping? I mean, that is, you go back and you look at, my mind just went completely blank. The Missing Time by Bud Hopkins and some of the other stuff
Yeah.
that's very similar to the abduction phenomenology. So, it's strange hitchhiking. I've had a very this is my experience with the hitchhikers following me home is in the underground bunker where I'm at now is I had a flashlight sitting on my desk, and it was there one moment. I turned around, did something, turned back, and it was gone. And I'm thinking, okay, I knocked it off, rolled somewhere. I'm like, I'm a guy, so this is like my favorite flashlight. I'm a flashlight geek. So I'm crawling around on the floor like, some sort of demented mole looking for this thing. I can't find it. And I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. So I retreat to the bivouac site of the bunker down here, and I go to sleep. And the next day when I wake up, I come back to my desk, and there it is, sitting right there on the desk where it was before it disappeared.
Oh.
And so where you go with that is the trickster, aspect of this stuff is very much alive and well. And sometimes you have the trickster phenomena follow you home, as well as experiencing the trickster phenomena, in the field. Like you've heard voices in the Meadow. You've heard
Yes.
one say time travel. Our
Yes.
friend Daryl has heard giggling and laughing. And so, this phenomena is very real. And, sometimes be careful what you wish for, because if you want to experience it, it might just follow you home and be the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, like in my case, but I didn't have a whole lot of activity after that. That was actually the last time I had some major activity in my home. Not that I think that I honestly don't think that we can keep the ETs out,
No.
and I have had some ET activity in my home as well, a few years ago, but that was before the orb incident. So I don't know. It's all very strange. But yeah, there's certain things you can do to try to protect your home energetically. And I take the
Mhm.
precautions now, and I've learned to protect myself. And especially when we're out in the field, Trey, because I don't want something to cling on to me
No.
and come home and live in my house with me. I don't need that. My house is full.
Well,
So,
unless you can count it as a dependent when you file your income taxes, and that's a
well,
wholly different thing.
yeah, I could see that. That'd be okay. But I don't think that that's a possibility, unfortunately. So, yeah. Interesting stuff, though. Yeah. So, I mean, did anything else happen that weekend? I mean, I know that our good friend Tim
Mhm.
took that the SD card out of the camera that night and put it in a bag and drove it home on a motorcycle that night to put it somewhere safe. Right? Tell us about that right quick.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
I want to
you know
hear that.
once we pulled the SD card out of the FLIR, is we put it into a foil lined bag to protect it from electromagnetic fields and all of that stuff. And we knew that we had something special, something very, very, very special, very unique. So he took the pouch, he put it inside of his riding jacket. He got on his motorcycle and rode 3 hours back home. And as soon as he got home, the first thing he did was open up his big metal safe and put it inside of the safe, and lock it up, which I have a thumb drive with all of this stuff on it locked up in my safe too. So we thought it was just really, really that special. And the odd thing is you would think that the portal or the box was, the strangest thing that happened that night. Just before that happened, we saw two entities, and that's the only way I know how to describe it. Is they were thermal signatures on our FLIR, about 6 foot tall, 24 inches wide, roughly man, sized. And the really weird thing is it was, one form. It would shrink down, it would get big, it would shrink down, it would get big, then split into two, and then go back to one. So, we had those figures, those entities, those heat signatures that did not correspond with any of our team members, because we all carry radios. Everybody has an assigned location. We know where everybody is. So that particular incident with the figures was just before we encountered the portal or the box. So it was just a really, really, really strange evening. And it was actually, a year before we had even more wacky strangeness, that I can't explain.
Yeah. I mean, we could spend the next hour talking about more of the Meadow, and I think that we will. Okay. I think we will. We have other places that we research, and Trey, I know you go to, all over the South and research, but what makes the Meadow so special though? Do you think it's the actual land there and the phenomenon there, or do you think it's the people that go out there to research it with our team?
The answer to that is yes. I know that's not a real answer. There is some sort of correlation that people, can manifest this phenomena. And I think sometimes when you have people that are dialed in and tuned in and turned on, that they're more receptive to this. And many of our members are trained remote viewers. So, they're people that have been trained to be able to access that, that part of their being, that extra dimensional part of their humanness. And I think that makes them, very receptive to these things. But you go back and you start looking at the folklore. Some of these areas, have had this phenomena going on for a very long time. So I think it's probably a bit of both. I think it's having the right team members with the right attitude, which is huge, with an open mind at the right place. So, I think it's probably all those aspects. And that's why, it's really important that you have a very mature team, a bunch of folks that are really dialed in, they're focused on the mission. We have a lot of folks on our team from military background, special operations, emergency medicine, paramedics, law enforcement. So, they're folks that are, used to dealing with, high stress situations and staying on mission, staying focused. So, and we go out there with a plan. It's not just like a bunch of, hillbillies out there with, a Kodak 110 camera looking to find some haints. We're actually going out there with a mission. We have a briefing before we go out, an operations order before every weekend. So, we actually go out there with a purpose. So I think all these factors combined really, really increase the likelihood that you're going to experience something and perhaps in the experience, being able to capture it somehow empirically, be it on film, a Geiger counter, audio, whatever.
Interesting. Well, we have a question here, but Eugene wants to know what you think about sleep paralysis. And before you answer that, Trey, we have the option of taking a short break right now. Okay. I know this is not the regular format for Spaced Out Radio, but Dave's not here, and we're not broadcasting live on the radio tonight. So we're going to, we can take about a 3 or 4 minute break if you'd like, Trey, and we can come back, or we can keep talking. What do you feel like?
Yeah, let me go grab me something to drink, and I'll be
Perfect.
right back.
Okay, well, I'm gonna go to listen. I want to thank Vaughn Patrick and Nicole Sakic and Christina Gomez. Thank you guys so much for the super chats, the super stickers. We here at Spaced Out Radio really appreciate that so much. We have a whole lot more to talk about tonight, so you guys go get some popcorn and a snack and get you something to drink, refill your sodas and your waters and whatever else you guys have in your cups. I'm going to run a little commercial but it's going to be for after hours. So you guys pardon it. You know, it is after hours, but we love after hours. We'll be back in about 3 minutes. Okay. We'll see y'all in just a minute. Hey, everybody. I'm Jessica Jones, the Cryptid Huntress, and thank you guys so much for sticking around. We just took a really short break, and I have an amazing guest here tonight. We have Trey Hudson here, and yes, I am sitting in the captain's chair tonight. I'm filling in for Dave Scott, who will be back tomorrow. You guys never fear. Dave Scott will be back here tomorrow. Okay. But for tonight, I'm having a blast. This is a lot of fun. And I have Trey Hudson here, who's actually a teammate of mine. We've been friends for a long time. And he's written a book called The Meadow Project, Explorations into the South Skinwalker Ranch. Okay. So you guys, absolutely, I highly recommend this book. It's about our team's research along with Trey's story. Okay, this is all about Trey, and it's got some of our team's research in there. So I'm going to bring Trey back up. We have so much more to talk about tonight. What's up, Trey?
Hey, how you doing?
Thank you for sticking around. I'm glad you're still
Sure.
here. Okay, awesome. Well, before we left for our break just then, we had a question in the chat, and it was about what do you think about sleep paralysis? Okay, what do
Yeah.
you think about that? Because I've had times where I've been awakened at night and had entities in my room, or what I
Mhm.
thought were entities, and I couldn't move. What do you think that is?
Yeah, I think there's two distinct phenomena going on. One is something called hypnopompic dreaming, and that is where, as you're either falling asleep or coming out of sleep, uh, your brain can't distinguish between the dream state and reality. And reality is such a fluid thing anyway. But and there seems to be uh, a correlation between a perception of entities or dark figures, dark shapes that are malevolent, that are very evil.
Hmm.
And, I've had that happen to me. As I remember the last time it happened, my back was hurting and was sleeping in my recliner in my living room. And I remember being paralyzed. I remember trying to scream and couldn't. All I could do was grunt. And I looked to my left, and on the couch adjacent to my chair was a black figure, and it was
Ooh,
absolutely,
yeah.
just seething with evilness. But I remember, I know what hypnopompic dreaming is, and in the logical part of my brain kind of, popped up and said, "Hey, here I am. Hey, listen to what I have to say. You're having a hypnopompic dream." And I started, rationalizing this and thinking through it. And I'm like, okay, I know what this is. I woke up and, I was okay. I wasn't panicked because I knew what it was. Okay, turn the page. There are, in my opinion, instances where people have had interactions with entities at night that are very similar to hypnopompic dreaming, but is not hypnopompic dreaming. And usually the way I think that you can distinguish that is if your rational mind can say, okay, I know this is hypnopompic dreaming, this is sleep paralysis. And although it seems real, it's not. And you can't get over that. If it's like, okay, yeah, I know this, I know what hypnopompic dreaming is, but this isn't it. This is something totally different. And there's tons of stories. Whitley Strieber writes about it in his book Communion. Uh, that there's a whole other side to this. So I think a lot of what people experience is just a normal waking sleeping cycle, but there's another sliver of the pie. Another pie shape out of the graph of sleep paralysis. That's something entirely different.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so real when it's happening though. You couldn't tell me some of the times that I've woken up that there wasn't really something standing beside me, because, when you're actually in it and you're experiencing it, it's very real, very real.
Right.
So yeah.
Well, and I think some of them are real. I think some
Yeah.
of them are, manifestation of the sleeping cycle, but I think there are other parts of it that are in fact real.
Oh wow. Now, we were talking about hitchhikers before we left the first half of the show. Well, Andrew Gnomes and Trucking Express, thank you so much for that super chat. You are so sweet. We really do appreciate it. He said that he has encountered a hitchhiker type entity, druids that jump out of the road from nowhere, humanoid cryptid that he encountered all this during trucking. He drives a truck, I guess, right? So I don't know, maybe that's a different type of hitchhiker, but a hitchhiker nonetheless. These things are, I don't know. I can assume you've seen some weird stuff. Entities walking down the side of the road, being on the road that much, but yeah, maybe a
Yeah, and
different type of hitchhiker.
well, in the America's over the road truckers, they travel, spend hours on the roads. So
Yeah.
they're the ones that are going to experience the strangeness in the middle of the night. In the deep dark back roads of America. They're the ones that are going to see they're going to see the strange lights in the sky. So, I imagine every single over the road trucker has some amazing stories.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Yeah, well, speaking of amazing stories, let's talk a little bit more about the Meadow and some of the
Mhm.
other experiences that our teammates have had there and experiences that we've had, what you've had. Whenever I'm out at the Meadow, it never fails. My car always beeps and the
Yeah.
doors lock and the alarm goes off. Okay. I'm one of those people where I've had to get one of those carabiners to put my keys on. And anytime I get out of my car, I immediately put the carabiner on my belt loop
Mhm.
with my keys on it. And it never leaves that spot because my keys will get locked in my car while I'm out there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because I remember, one of the times you and I were sitting there, discussing it during the day, and it's like beep beep lock, and it's like, nah, that's just Jessica's car locking
Yeah.
itself on its own. It's a normal occurrence. It happens all the time. Yeah, it's all kind of, it has become a joke. It's like, yeah, well, when is Jessica's car going to lock herself or turn itself on or do something like that? It's
Or
inevitably
the
going to happen.
alarm. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
or
always the alarm. And it doesn't matter which location we're at. I mean, there's different locations that we go and set up base camp. It happens every time. And it doesn't
yeah,
matter what car I'm in. I've driven different cars there, different vehicles, trucks, SUVs, cars. It never fails. Every car. And
yeah,
I'm definitely not touching those buttons. So
yeah.
and actually, last time I was there, Katie Page, who's in the chat tonight with Colorado MUFON, was there with us,
Mhm.
and she and I stayed behind so I could drive her to the airport that day to get her back to Colorado, and my battery was dead by
Yeah.
the time we got ready to leave, and we had stayed behind, so everyone had left. Um, Luckily, we had someone sticking around down the road that was able to jump the car off for us. But that was wild. I should have known. I should have known better,
Yeah.
Trey.
Well, you're talking about, vehicles. One of our teammates, Kristen, uh, I can't remember if it was that weekend or another weekend, but she was driving back home and her vehicle lost all power, completely was dead, and it all of a sudden, 40 minutes later, the power came back on. Now, where have we ever read about vehicles being, on a dark road and losing all power? That's just rife through UFO lore, and UFO reports.
Yes.
We've also had, I think that was one of the times your GPS kept taking you in circles.
I'm back.
Okay.
My internet is acting up. We may have
Yeah.
storms or something. I'm not sure what's going on. Sorry
Yeah.
about that. I'm here. Yeah. That was the night that I think Matt Delph was with us that weekend
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Kristen. You guys might know Kristen Payton. She's actually the newest member of Texas Front Porch. So you guys may be seeing her a lot. She's done some shows with
Very
me.
good.
And so Kristen's she's getting to be pretty well known now, but a lot of people know who she is. But we all left around the same time from the
Hmm.
Meadow, and we all three had car troubles on the way home, where our
Yeah.
GPSs were taking us in the wrong directions. Mine actually took me in circles around a small town, and if I didn't know where I was, I would have gotten severely lost going
Hmm.
home. So luckily I knew, but also it was storming, and so that could have I just kind of
Yeah.
blamed it on that that it was just the weather. But I don't know. You never know. Coming out of the Meadow, anything's possible.
Yeah, you were talking about Kristen in that particular weekend, and had been talking earlier about the hitchhikers. She had something really weird happen, and I don't know if you remember this. Is she had this photograph appear on her cell phone,
I
and it
don't
was
remember that.
it was a photograph of a meadow, but not our meadow, another meadow, another pasture, a field, and she, wasn't a photograph she took, wasn't a photograph somebody sent her,
Huh.
but this image showed up on her phone, and the timestamp on the image, in the gallery was at the exact same time that she was sleeping, and the phone was about 2 feet away from her head. So,
Wow.
she sent it. She sent all of us the photo and says, does this ring a bell with anybody? Does this location look familiar? And none of us could come up with anything. And it turns out that the photograph was a piece of land that was for sale not too far from where she lives. And it was from a realtor's website. And she hasn't been looking at property. She hasn't gone online and looked at property. But somehow there was something about this photograph. It had somehow imprinted itself on her phone, and all of the metadata was stripped off of the photograph. When she sent it to me, I tried to look and see if I could, get a geolocation or anything off of it.
Yeah.
So that's just some of these just weird things that are continuously happening to our team members, both in the Meadow, actually at the location, and then elsewhere.
Well, speaking of the Meadow, okay, my computer keeps freezing up, y'all. Please, if I make a weird face and it gets stuck like that, y'all don't laugh too hard, okay? Happens to everybody. Okay, so here's a picture of the Meadow. Now, I know it's a classified location. We don't tell anybody where the Meadow is, but just to give the audience an idea of what we're talking about, this is a picture that I took one day. I think it was like 156 degrees that day. It was very hot. That was a miserable day. Beautiful day, but hot. And that is our friend Matthew Delph, a research friend of ours, and Trey is in front of Matthew, and we're walking through the Meadow. So this will give you an idea of what the Meadow looks like. This is a part of the Meadow. The Meadow is a very large piece of land in the middle of nowhere. Okay, but this is the area. So now y'all know what it looks like. But yeah, that is very odd, Trey. It doesn't surprise me that Kristen would have some weird picture show up on her phone. I mean, we've been out in the field, and our friend Glenn Jackson was on my show here off the trails a week ago, and his phone actually fried. I think it went back to some like 1982 or something. And it fried. It went back to some strange year, that I don't even know if we had cell phones back then. Before it fried.
They were about this big, and you carried it with a strap.
Yeah. Like something out of the military or something. Yeah, I had one of those box phones, a bag phone. Yeah. That's what it was. Yeah, I know some people in the audience probably remember bag phones. I don't know. I had one for an emergency. It probably cost a lot of money to use, so my mom was always like, "Do not use this in case of an emergency only."
Yeah, of course, everybody with their bag phone, talking looked like they were calling in an airstrike, and in Beirut, send the fighter jets in right now,
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's what I had. But yeah, let's talk about Bob for a minute, okay? Because our teammate Bob is the king of high strangeness out in that field.
He is like a weird magnet. I mean, he is just like, I don't know how else to put it. If something weird is going to happen, Bob is going to be at the epicenter of it. And it goes all the way back, and it's kind of, his weirdness or his weird experiences is kind of what started all this is, back in 2016, I started looking at the folklore of this area, and we decided we were going to research some folklore in this general location. We set up at this campsite, which has become our base camp. But Daryl, our friend, he and I went about 20 miles to another area where there was supposedly a haunted road, where the
with
local
monkey bears.
Well, no, they didn't say anything about monkey bears, but they're like, don't go down that road at night. Them haints will get you. Don't ever go down there at night. So I'm like, hell yeah, I'm going. Sign me up. So Daryl and I went down to the haunted road and didn't really have much happen. It was we kind of got skunked. But while Bob was back at base camp, he had this UFO experience, this UAP experience, which was really cool. So he was back at base camp. It was in January. It was kind of drizzly and rainy and cold and just icky. It was one of those kind of evenings where you've got your polypropylene shirt on and a sweater and then a jacket and then your Gore-Tex jacket on over that. It was just, one of those kind of evenings. So Bob is back at base camp, doing true yeoman's work, watching our stuff. and he's drinking coffee, trying to stay warm. And unfortunately, the law of physics, exists. So if something goes in, it has eventually got to go out. So, he was full of coffee and he had to, take care of that. So he steps out behind the campsite and, right there between base camp and the big creek. So he was kind of in that area and he's taking care of his biological necessity. He gets done and he sees this beam of light come down. No noise, just a beam of light. And the first thing is, we try to rationalize stuff. That's how our human brains are made. So it's like, oh, it was a flash of lightning because we've got cloud cover and it's overcast and all of that. And then he sees a large white orb come up in the sky, behind the trees. And he's like, oh, great, the moon is out, the clouds are clearing, we're going to have a nice weekend. It should be, maybe be a little bit clearer, a little bit nicer. And then the moon starts moving sideways and then stops. And then this small dot appears in the middle of the moon and it gets larger and larger and larger until it completely blots out, this circular anomaly and winks out. So it's like Bob just had this really cool UFO sighting. So it's like, yeah, let's research this place. Forget about that haunted road business. Let's stay right here. And the next year, or a few months later in July, we went back and we started really looking at the Meadow. We had this weird thing at base camp. So we started kind of exploring around base camp and we found this big field, this big meadow. And it's like, let's research here because if something moves through the meadow, it'll leave, footprints. You saw in the photograph, it's a big open area. At night, stuff, we'll see things on our FLIR, things in our night vision. So let's just start focusing there. And that's when the weirdness really started happening. We had decided to set up some teams in the, in the field and have a team run across the top of the ridge and perhaps flush anything down into the meadow. And Bob was going to be our guy up on top of the ridge. And he got to a well-known landmark and he gets on the radio and he says, I don't remember how I got here. I'm at this landmark. I don't remember getting here. So of course we're like, okay, maybe something bad is going on medically. So we do a real quick, kind of a quick medical assessment over the radio. Can you, repeat Mary Had a Little Lamb. Can you feel your extremities? Does your head hurt? No. I'm fine. Let me just, continue on with my mission, get across the top of the meadow. And we thought, well, maybe, he was just zoned out and doesn't remember getting there. We've all driven to work and gotten there and, we don't know how we got there. And so, we just put it off to that. Well, it turns out that was missing time. Okay. Which really factors into that evening. Bob went across the top of the ridge, dropped down to the westernmost edge of the meadow, started working his way across. And our friend Tim and Daryl, who we've mentioned earlier during this interview, are watching him through their FLIR. So they see this man-shaped heat signature start moving across the meadow. Hey, Bob, is that you? Yeah, that's me. And then they see this figure, this signature, turn into a ball of energy, a ball of heat, and move like 100 yards in a few seconds. And when we calculated all of that, it was like at 23 miles per hour was how fast this orb moved. And then it stopped. It turned back into a man-shaped heat signature. And of course, everybody's like really freaked out now. I mean, it's really strange. They get on the radio and say, Bob, are you okay? And they're watching this signature through their FLIR, and that brings the radio up to its mouth and it says, yes, I'm fine. Why? Don't move. We're coming to you. And they get there and they said, are you okay? Once again, Bob has had some sort of weird thing happen to him. And he's like, yeah, I'm fine. Why? And he goes, really, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Why are you asking? We just saw you turn into a ball of energy. He's like, no. I just walked over here. There's nothing weird going on. And so, we argue even this day. Daryl and I get in these long discussions about, which was real, the observer or the observed? Which reality was shifted? Was it Bob's reality or their reality? So Okay, so it can't get any weirder than that, right? Well, no, it gets weirder. Glenn, and I think he referred to this on one of your interviews, he saw a white humanoid figure peeking at the camp from around a tree. So we have a cryptid watching us, another figure, a humanoid watching us. The next morning, Bob comes up with his GPS. Bob has a background in backcountry search and rescue. He always has his GPS on. And he says, I want to show you these tracks on my GPS. And these tracks are several kilometers long in areas that he didn't go to. So you go like point A to point B, point B to C, C to D. Exact straight lines. You can't travel over this terrain in a straight line. You just can't do it. You can't do it by vehicle. You can't do it on foot. So how could he travel over this terrain in a straight line that would show up on a GPS? In the air.
Flying. Yeah.
Flying. So he showed us this track line on his GPS, which was his personal track line. We saw it. We observed it. We remembered it. And it's like, when you get back home, download this, send us the track lines. We're going to do some analysis of it, using, some geolocation software and all of that. And it was erased before he got home. It all disappeared.
Oh.
But the cool thing is,
he should have put it on the motorcycle and driven it out of there.
Yeah. So, Bob is, he's just that guy. We had another really strange incident. We started noticing that there's these little micro spikes in radiation whenever this high strangeness is happening. And I'm talking, background radiation of 0.06, 0.02 microsieverts per hour, very small. But when we see this high strangeness, it'll spike up to maybe 0.12 microsieverts per hour. So once again, and this was one of the times you were there with us. We were staying at the hunt camp, if you recall.
Yeah.
And we were down at the Meadow, trying to do Stephen Greer's CE5 protocol. And while we were down there, Bob was at base camp, and it was pitch black that night. It was like just inky black. And Bob hears, and I'm going to describe it the best I can, a craft, some sort of conveyance, move past the base camp, on an adjacent road, completely dark.
Wow.
And the only way that somebody can move a vehicle down this road at that night is if they're using something like I have right here, which are Gen 3 night vision goggles, driving completely blacked out. That's the only way you could do it. The odds of somebody having Gen 3 night vision just happen to be driving around in the woods, is pretty remote.
Mm-hmm.
So some sort of craft or vessel moved past our campsite. And where it gets even stranger is Bob, since we started having these radiation spikes previously, he's running his Geiger counter. And he has a spike of 0.60 microsieverts per hour, which is a pretty significant spike off of a background of a 0.06, so 10 times as much radiation as the background. And we have a photograph of his Geiger counter when he had this spike. He also starts hearing voices in the woods. Now, one of the things that you read about at Skinwalker Ranch, something we've encountered at the Meadow and elsewhere, are disembodied voices. So now we have disembodied voices, and this is, Bob the weird magnet, once again, attracting this strangeness. And it would be easy to say, that's a bunch of BS. He imagined this, but there's a photograph of his Geiger counter with that spike of radiation. And that's not something you can manufacture. That's actually, it's an empirical measurement of radiation. So the neat thing is you don't have to go out into the meadow or go out into the woods to encounter strangeness. Sometimes it happens right there at base camp.
It does.
You can just leave your slippers on and sit around the campfire, and experience all kind of weird stuff. You don't even have to go out.
That's right. And now there are no coincidences. And Paranormal Pixie, hey Laura, she wrote she wrote a comment that had the word cat in it. And and this was the same night, if I recall, that we were hearing a cat in the woods meowing, which was
Yeah.
completely out of place. And now I know they're bobcats out in the woods, but this sounded like a domesticated cat. Okay. And so Paranormal Pixie, Laura, thank you for, making me remember this by writing the word cat tonight. Because we actually, a whole group
Yeah.
of us went walking down the road looking for a cat, and it was meowing quite a bit. And as the closer we got to it, it stopped meowing. Okay. But we were thinking there was an actual cat lost in the woods, so it was weird. And then the next morning, I happened to be pulling my oracle cards and my tarot cards out that morning, just for, my morning practice that I did at the time. Getting centered and having some like a meditation in the morning. And guess what card came out? The cat card. The cat spirit came out, and it said, in the book, it said, listen when the cat meows, is what it said. So I thought that was very interesting. And also the rabbit card came out, the cat and the rabbit was all about taking a journey into the meadow. And we were at the meadow. So yeah, I thought it was really odd and interesting that those cards came out that morning.
And another thing that was really weird on that particular morning, which still just really sticks with me, is we have a good friend Tony who graduated the U.S. Air Force Academy, special operations guy. Really really solid guy. And we were out in the meadow doing the CE5 protocol. And, we just started joking and laughing and carrying on, and just, we thought, it's a bust, nothing happened. Well, the next day, Tony wakes up and he said, Trey, I woke up this morning about 5:30 and I had this word in my mind. There's just this word just etched into my mind. The word was Nox Magbee. And I'll spell it phonetically, Noxmagbee, Nox Magbee. He said, then I woke again at 6:30. And the word is right there. Does that mean anything to you? I'm like, Tony, no, it doesn't mean anything to me, but let me write it down and I'll research it. I'll see what I can find. So in my research, I found the word Nox. Okay. Nox is a Latin variation of Nyx. Nyx is the Greek goddess of the night. Nox was a Romanized, Latinized version of the goddess of the night. So Nox is the Roman goddess of the night. Magbee is, I researched that and I found a word in Old English in the poem Beowulf. The word was Magba, which means children or kindred. So during the time of when Beowulf was written, the Romans had just left England or Great Britain. So the two words are contemporaneous. Nox would be known to speakers of Old English. Magba was an Old English word for kindred or children. So you put those together and you have children of the night goddess. Okay, children of the night goddess. So where have we heard of things that have big heads like children that come and visit people at night while they're asleep?
Yeah.
And that would be the Greys. That would be your typical Whitley Strieber kind of abduction, experience of childlike figures with large heads standing around you at night. So children of the night goddess. And so that was a download that Tony got right after we had tried the CE5 protocol, in the meadow that previous evening.
Wow. I mean, it's always interesting waking up the next morning when we're out in the field and sitting around the campfire and everybody telling their stories about what happened after everyone turned in for the night. Because a lot of times that's when we get a lot of activity. And of course, I'm the one that always puts my tent way off, trying to get away, far away from everybody, just in case I snore. I don't want anybody to hear me snoring. Can you blame me? So in case I do snore, but it's all fun and games until I'm having to walk back to my tent all by myself in the middle of the night and it's dark and you start questioning your decisions at that point for putting your tent so far away from the group. But yeah, at nighttime, a lot of times we'll have dreams and we can't discount those dreams. Like it's all part of the research. And let me tell you, I enjoyed sleeping out in the field and having weird dreams and being able to, it kind of brings everything together the next morning. And a lot of times if you're laying down and falling asleep, you'll hear knocks and whoops of the Sasquatch out in the field. A lot of weird stuff. You'll hear something walking by your tent at night. You can hear footsteps and, and it's all about just observing and being ready to protect yourself if you need to, of course. But yeah, it's interesting out there, Trey. Very interesting. And that's not the only thing. There's more. But wait, there's more. I think several of us have had a lot of missing time incidences where our equipment has malfunctioned and the time has changed. Yeah.
It's gotten to the point, it's gotten so bad. I wear an old style wind up analog watch now, because the electronics are just totally screwed with. I've had cameras that work perfectly, test them out prior to exiting base camp, go out to the meadow. They don't work at all. Come back to base camp, work perfectly. Kristen and I had a very weird experience one time, very weird experience. And we were wearing GoPros, on harnesses. And the time that the weird experience happened, it wasn't recorded. It was totally blanked out. So, electronics, are totally haywire. And it's not just at the meadow. You look at, all of these strange locations all over the earth. People have accounts of their electronics not working, or showing the wrong time, or GPS is going haywire. Your automobile GPS taking you in a circle. Like we've never heard of that, right?
Right.
So you never know. I mean, you never know. And you had mentioned David Paulides, experiences in some of his books earlier. Is the experience that Kristen and I had was very weird, almost like a David Paulides kind of experience. I've been to the meadow probably, I don't know, 100, 150 times. I mean, tons of times. And Kristen and I decided we were going to explore on the opposite side of the creek, the big stream there. And so we had crossed over, and somehow, and I don't know how this happened, and I'm an Eagle Scout. I've hunted big game in Africa. I've backpacked all over North America. I'm comfortable in the woods. And I somehow ended up back where I started, in the meadow. But it was different. And it's hard for me to articulate this. It looked different. It felt different. And I'm like, hey, Kristen, I found a new place over here. It's like a whole other field. We need to investigate it. And she's like, what are you talking about? I said, no, it's really cool. She goes, just don't move. Just stay right where you're at. I'm coming to you. So she makes it back across the creek, and I'm standing there, and I'm like all kind of giddy. I discovered something cool. And she goes, Trey, where do you think you are? I'm like, oh, there's this new field, just on the, the other side of the creek. She goes, Trey, you're in the meadow. You're where we started. And this is going to sound crazy. Yeah, like all of tonight hasn't sounded crazy. But it's almost like everything just kind of shifted and changed and went back to the normal meadow. And I was so disoriented and so discombobulated that of course, the team back at base camp, they were concerned because she's like, yeah, something's wrong with Trey. He's having, he's really disoriented. And I said, okay, nobody talk to me. Just, radio silence. Give me about 10 minutes. And to this day, and this was just a few meters from where the portal was, by the way.
Yeah.
And to this day, I wonder if we didn't have the protocol in place where, we always go out with a teammate, we always have radio contact, we always have a GPS, map, compass. If I hadn't had those protocols in place, would I have ended up as one of the chapters in one of David Paulides' books? And, is that kind of extreme disorientation what happens to these people before they go missing? I can tell you, from my personal, it was very unnerving. It was very weird. And it's something I hope I don't experience again.
Wow. I have a question for you. So if the team experiences another portal, okay, and I don't believe we've experienced another one since then, not at that location, at least. What is the protocol? Has the team come up with a protocol of some sort when you experience another one of those?
Yeah, we have. Now is the protocol adequate or not? I don't know. We're just going to have to kind of take a stab at it. Is the protocol is we rope up, we have a safety, we have a documentarian. We will send one team member into the portal or the anomaly roped up, and we'll have the documentarian filming. We'll have the safety observing. We'll have radio contact back with a QRF or quick reaction force that can come and help us if they need be. And the idea is if something weird happens, that hopefully we can pull the person back out using a rope, like a climbing rope and harness. Uh, you know that's the idea behind it, because when we encountered it the first time, we just didn't have these protocols in place. And afterwards it's like, oh wow, that was kind of dumb. Maybe we should have thought this through a little bit better. And so we have several protocols in place. We have a contact protocol. We carry what we call contact chits, which is just basically a pictogram on a piece of cloth that you can fold up and put in your pocket. And if you encounter an entity, you can lay this pictogram out that has like prime numbers and certain representations of the solar system and stuff, that hopefully an intelligent entity would look at that and say, okay, these things that we're encountering, i.e. the humans, obviously have a little bit more intellect than a naked mole rat. They understand what prime numbers are. So, maybe I won't eat them or whatever. So yeah, we've tried to develop protocols, and it's a continuously evolving thing. In this business, you just can't stay stagnant. You always have to be changing with the situation when it comes up.
Well, I think it's interesting that, we've never heard of anyone else ever experiencing a portal and sending people in to check it out and then pulling them back out, so honestly, you just got to go with your gut and say, we're going to rope up, and, whichever brave soul volunteers to walk into it. I know I'm a little hesitant to volunteer to walk into a portal because I've got a kid. Okay.
Yeah.
I've got a young kid. Okay. So, that needs his mom. So I don't think I'm going to volunteer to go in, but I'd be glad to be there to pull on that rope. Pull whoever out. Let's hope there's somebody at the end of the rope when we pull them out. Okay.
Yeah. Right. It's funny you mentioned that, because before they went into the portal, we were actually discussing who had the better life insurance policy, who had the larger amount, so I mean, that's
interesting, these conversations that we have out in the woods, right, Trey?
Yeah.
But it's modern day problems. You have to get a modern day solution, I guess, right? And I mean, who's to say? I mean, it's like we're exploring the moon or Mars or something out there when it comes to this, because we just don't know what it is. And someone in the chat tonight was asking if there's a video of this and where they can see this video of the portal. Now I know that you show it when you do conferences, when you speak at conferences sometimes. Now, is this something that's going to be released to the general public one day?
Okay, here's the bad news. It could be good news depending on how you look at it. I hope sometime in the future that I will be able to present these experiences in a format that would reach a very, very large audience. And that's all I'm going to say on that. But because of some contractual agreements and negotiations, I am not at a position where I can put the video out there for wide public dissemination. But several people, that have been in the chat this evening, that have seen the video, they've seen the videos of the entities, they've seen the FLIR still footage of the large cryptid, in the wood line and things like that. So, I mean, it's definitely out there. I hate it, but I just can't release it right yet. I'm hoping I've got some deals cooking, and that maybe, sometime in the future that will be disseminated to a much larger audience.
Yeah. Well, I know everybody's looking forward to that.
Yeah. Everybody keep their fingers crossed.
Yeah. We're all looking forward to that. Now, of most of the people on our team, okay, we have a very diverse group of people on Anomalous Studies and Observation Group, as well as the other teams that we do work with out in the field. But it's pretty evident a lot of the people on our team are former military, current military, law enforcement. Now, what do you think the attraction is to the paranormal field for law enforcement and military people? Is there a connection? It seems to
Yeah, I
be.
think it seems to be, and I think it's because of the training and the mindset. Military people, for the most part, are very disciplined. Law enforcement people are very disciplined. People in emergency medicine are very disciplined, uh, and they're goal oriented. That they know they can think of what is the long term goal, and that to get to that long term goal, sometimes there are a lot of little steps and oftentimes missteps, but they stay focused
Mhm.
on the long term goal. I think it's a mindset. Also, people that are in these fields have a very organized way of going about doing things. Uh, I know just from my experience, not only doing paranormal investigations but also high strangeness research, is if you take your digital recorder, on your phone, and you just go running out in the woods, and you don't have any concept of what you're doing, you don't have any plan, it's probably not going to be very fruitful. But if you back up and you think about what you're doing and you have an objective and then you have sub objectives based off of that, and you go there with a purpose in mind, and you think about what kind of equipment you need to take in there, oftentimes it yields much, much better results. And I, alluded to this earlier, is before every expedition, we have an operations order. It's like about a 10-page outline of exactly what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, what kind of equipment you need, what are the latitude and longitudes of the places we're going to be. So everybody has a common idea of what the goal is. Before we go out, there's always a briefing. We're going to go out there. We're going to, send teams out. You Bob and Glenn, y'all are on this team. Daryl and Kristen, y'all are on this team. This is your mission. This is your mission. Everybody knows where they're at. Everybody's in radio communication. So there's a go. There's a structure to it. And piss poor planning yields piss poor results. That's an old saying we
Yeah.
have. And positive planning yields positive results. So I think that's why sometimes the people that have stayed in this field for a period of time, that have had successes that keep them interested in it, usually have those kind of backgrounds.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't look past it because on all of our teams, a lot of the guys on our teams are former military and stuff. So I just, it's just an observation. And honestly, I feel a lot safer out in the woods with you guys there. Okay.
Yeah.
It's safe. And, another thing is that everybody on our teams have different specialties like tracking and, remote viewing. And, you're a remote viewer just like I am. Okay. And you're really good at it, Trey. Okay.
Yeah.
I remember those pyramids that you made out of clay. I'll never forget that. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, how does that play a role in the research, being able to be a remote viewer?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's, I think that people that are remote viewers, and this just from your experience, is we have a intellectual understanding that there's more to us than this this meat machine, this physical thing we are. The human experience is something more than that. Okay, so that does a couple of things. Number one, it primes the pump. Okay, so if I'm remote viewing and I've done it, I know that there are other things out there, so I'm open-minded. Okay, so I'm kind of, the pump is primed to be aware. Also, people that are remote viewers are really in tune with different aspects and different energies because we have been trained on how to interact with them. And I think people that are remote viewers, either formally trained like I am with CRV, or people that are natural intuitives, I think are very good receivers. It's kind of like having a radio receiver tuned to all these different stations, but a remote viewer knows how to get the frequency tuned in exactly and being able to start to receive things. So I think we're a little bit more receptive, and I think we're a little bit more preceptive
Mhm.
than maybe your average person.
Speaking of being receptive, one of the experiments that we do out in the meadow is the Estes protocol.
Oh
And
yeah.
we have a member of our team who has actually been on Off the Trails, Daryl Neese, is one of our teammates, and he is the king of the Estes sessions. Okay. He's
Yeah.
such a great receiver. Tell us a little bit about about that protocol and how that gets results out in the field?
Well, kind of stepping back a little bit, is we don't look at this experience and this phenomenology through a narrow lens. We don't look at it through the lens of UFOologists, parapsychologists, cryptid researchers. It's like, okay, let's just experience this thing. And in that kind of worldview, lets us bring best practices from different disciplines. And one of the things that's used in the paranormal research field is a thing called the SD session. And everybody, has seen ghost boxes, on TV and stuff that, jump around these frequencies, and you sit there and you say, okay, it said Aunt Mildred or whatever. There's a certain bias in that because you sometimes hear what you want it to say.
Mm-hmm.
What the SD's protocol does is you take a ghost box, you put earbuds into your person that's designated as the receiver. They put earmuffs over that so they can't hear anything going on other than what's coming out of the ghost box. Their instructions are, if you hear an intelligible word, repeat it. Just say it out loud. Like, crazy as it sounds, if you hear the word rutabaga, just speak out rutabaga. And we also put blindfolds on them, so the person doesn't have any idea of what's going on around them. They don't know the questions that are being asked. So we took that tool, that technique, took it to the meadow, physically into the meadow, and started asking questions. And much to our surprise, we started getting direct replies back. I mean, direct replies, not just, questionable replies. And as I'm asking these questions and focusing on trying to figure out what the phenomenology of the portals is, electromagnetism, geomagnetic fields, plasma energy, and all of that, it starts getting really agitated. It gets really, really upset. And like it wants us to stop asking these questions. So we have that on video, which is it's a really cool session. In the book, I got the entire transcript of the SD session. So, what I think we have to do is, be willing to bring some different tools, out of the toolbox and try them, and not limit our thinking into just one, very narrow field of study.
Yeah, I think it's about having an open mind and thinking outside the box. And that's what our team does.
Yeah.
Now, Trey, we have just a few minutes left tonight. This has actually really flown by.
Wow.
I'm shocked how fast this has gone by. I'm used to having a 1 hour show. So 2 hours, I can't believe how fast it went by. But do you have any advice for people that want to get out and do some paranormal research out in the woods? Because I know you spend a lot of time in the woods. You also investigate haunted houses and stuff. Yeah. But what would your advice be for anyone who wants to get out in the woods?
Out in the woods, first of all, safety. Understand what the safety aspects of going out in the woods are. Always carry plenty of water. Carry a map. Know where you're going. For Pete's sake, take a buddy with you, because things can get weird pretty dang quick out there. And go ahead and invest the money in the right kind of outdoor equipment. Now, as far as the investigation part of it, do your research. Before you step foot in the woods, actually spend some time doing some research. And don't be afraid to step outside of your comfort zone. You be aware of your surroundings, have a plan, and probably most of all, have fun with it. The world is a whole lot stranger than we realize. 99% of the people out there have no idea of how weird things are. So go out there with an open mind, a good attitude, and the right equipment, and just let it happen. And sometimes you will be amazed at what you find.
Yeah, we have several people in the chat tonight saying, take a boomstick, if y'all know what that means.
Yeah.
How important is it for people to protect themselves when they're out in the field doing research?
I think it's important. I've carried a firearm in protection in the woods, most of my adult life. What we have to realize is it's not always four-legged creatures we need to worry about. It's sometimes two-legged creatures. And an interesting thing, and I kind of go into this in the book, is the area, around the meadow there's been murders there, dead bodies found, just all this like really crazy stuff. So, we always, we always, carry protection, as we can. And, I've got to say, make sure you understand the laws before you go out and do that. It's no fun, going out there for this grand adventure and getting jacked up because you didn't understand, the exact laws. But, be responsible and, make sure that you protect yourself, not only, physically, but make sure you protect yourself psychologically, because this stuff can kind of, if you're not prepared for it, it can kind of weird you out. It can kind of be a little bit disturbing. So, yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, you do. You have to get your head right. And I think that is where the remote viewing training really helps us out in that aspect as well, because the number one thing we have to learn with remote viewing is to get our minds right. Okay. And to be able to control our mind. It's not about mind controlling other people. It's controlling our own minds, which people don't understand the importance of that sometimes. Yeah. Well, Trey, okay, we got a couple minutes left. Tell us about your book and where people can find your amazing book about the research and your life story. Where can people find that?
Okay. The book is The Meadow Project, Exploration into the South Skinwalker Ranch. It is on Amazon. We have it in softback, hardback, ebook, and audiobook. Personally, I think the ebook is maybe $5 or $6. I think it's a heck of a deal. It's a lot of information in there that I haven't had a chance to go into tonight. If you're interested in finding me, I'm usually behind the liquor store, passed out most evening. No, I'm kidding.
He's not.
No, I'm not.
Trey.
Yeah, I know. You can find me on Facebook. Find me on Facebook. Trey Hudson -author, and the way to find the book on Amazon is just type in Trey Hudson in the Amazon search bar and the book will come up.
That's awesome. Trey, do you have any plans to write another book? I mean, this one has really taken off.
Yeah, I do. Like I said, I've got some experimental packages that I'm designing to take back out into the meadow. I've been working on one a little bit today. I hope to do some hypnotic regression and have some transcripts with that. That's something I hope that we can make that happen. And there's some weird experiences that I talked about tonight that's not in the first book. So, as long as I'm able, physically able to keep on researching, I'm going to, keep going out there in the woods and trying to make things happen.
Yeah. The meadow's not going anywhere. However, we do keep the location a secret because we want to maintain the integrity of this spot. And so, but one day if it ever leaks out there, we may not be able to go back and research there. Right, Trey?
Well, yeah, but you remember we have some other locations like the Field of Dreams and the Field of Nightmares, which are equally as strange, which we've heard disembodied voices, people being touched. So, we've got some alternate locations too. We
do. Well, you know what? It's been a fun ride, Trey, and it's not over. We've still got a lot more research to do. And I am so thankful that you came on here and spent your, what is this, Tuesday night? You spent your Tuesday night with us here at Spaced Out Radio. So please come back and we'll still have more to talk about. We can talk about the meadow for a week. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, Trey, thank you a million for being here and for being my guest tonight.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been great. Okay,
awesome. Well, Trey, I will see you soon. I'll be seeing you out in the woods here, maybe in a couple weeks. Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, you have a great night, and thanks again for being here. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Trey. All right, y'all. That was awesome. I want to thank everybody that did super chats and super stickers tonight. Andrew and Noam's Trucking Express, Vaughn Patrick, Nicole Sackich, and Christina Gomez. If I missed anybody, I apologize. I think I got everybody, but if not, you guys, please forgive me and just know that it means the world to us that you guys, give us super stickers and super chats tonight. So, yeah, I guess Dave Scott will be back tomorrow night. And I have had a blast being here with you guys. This is a lot of fun. I know you guys can catch me on the weekends here at Spaced Out Radio. I am the Cryptid Huntress, and I go off the trails Saturday and Sunday night. at 10 p.m. Eastern. That's 7 Pacific. And so, yeah, you guys please join me this weekend. I've got some great guests lined up. And yeah, I guess that's it. You guys have a wonderful night. And thank you guys for letting me host and for being here. And I'll see y'all this weekend. Y'all have a great night. Bye.
Mm-hmm.